What's going on, Johnny Nation? Welcome to episode 74 of the Eye of the Storm podcast. My name is David Barov, and St. John's is 4-2, getting ready for their first true road game of the year as they head to Morgantown to play the West Virginia Mountaineers. It's been 5 games now since our part 1 sit down with assistant coach Bob Walsh. We have plenty to cover. Bob is back. Welcome to part 2 of Coachcast. Bob Walsh, welcome back.
Hey, Dave, what's going on?
All good. Before we dive into the basketball side of things, I wanted to bring something up that I found really moving. Yesterday on November 27th, you shared a really, really heartfelt piece that you wrote on your blog, and I'll leave a description and a link to it in the podcast description. And it was about the last lesson that your father taught you and kind of what you remember and what you left with. And I found it very moving. I know a lot of people who read it yesterday found it really moving, but I think it would be nice to hear it in your own words and, a quick retelling about what this lesson and why it resonated with you so much and why I think it's important for other people to kind of remember this. And again, I want to thank you for sharing it, and I would love to hear about it.
I appreciate you bringing it up. It was the Monday after Thanksgiving, 15 years ago now, when I was the head coach at Rhode Island College, and I got a phone call that I thought was from my dad because my phone said dad, and it was right as we were heading into practice, and I didn't take it. And then I got another call a couple of minutes later, and same thing, and I figured, okay, why is my dad calling me? He knows we have practice. It was the Tampa police telling me that my dad had been found dead on the floor of his home in Tampa. So obviously it changed my world immediately. I had to get on the phone and call my brother and tell him and call my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and my mom. And, obviously incredibly challenging situation. And the one thing I couldn't shake was how lucky I felt that I had such a great relationship with my father. My father died when he was 63, obviously young. And, I was 36 at the time. So, but I knew from, my mom and my dad, how important family was and that it was really about the time we spent together. And I couldn't shake the feeling about how lucky I felt, which seemed odd to me when you get news that, your father died suddenly. So, we go through all of the, the scenarios, and we actually had to go down to Tampa. My brother and I, my dad had just built a retirement home down there, and we had to bring his body back and go through the funeral and set up the arrangements and all that. And the story is basically, there were so many people that showed up, and a lot of people don't. Everybody handles death differently, and people are uncomfortable when somebody near them, close to them, has to deal with it. And the one thing I say is you just show up, because what felt good for me and my brother was all of the people who showed up to pay respects, friends, colleagues, college buddies, high school buddies, people that we, didn't know. And, the story about the last lesson was, a guy who showed up from my dad's office who we didn't know and looked very out of place, and people can obviously go onto the link and read it, but I didn't know who he was, and he didn't look comfortable. He looked out of place, and I felt bad for that. And he just waited in line and shook our hands and said, thank you. He said, I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm very grateful for your father. And he was always a very good friend to me. And it turned out, after I did some digging, that he worked in the mailroom at my dad's office. And my dad was a very successful businessman, had a corner office on Park Avenue. And, that to me was such a powerful moment. I remember watching him walk out the door and walk back to the 6 train in the Bronx and thinking, wow, like it felt like he was sent there for a reason. And obviously this was just somebody who my dad had befriended, and it turns out they had a great relationship, and my dad had helped his family and his kids when they were in Catholic school. And he used to always sort the mail, the way my father wanted, and run errands for him. And, it was somebody that, based on my dad's, profile at the company and how well he had done, that my dad really didn't need to pay attention to. And here he was, it was a close friend of his who he had helped out. And this man took the subway up after work to see us, to pay his respects. And I thought, wow, that's literally my dad teaching me one more lesson, right? Like, how do you treat the people in your life who work in the mailroom, who are just there basically to try and help you, who you really don't have to treat very well if you choose not to. You could get away with it, so to speak, but why wouldn't you treat everybody with an incredible amount of respect and dignity and kindness? And my dad did that, and I thought this guy who showed up from the mailroom at his wake was just an incredible lesson for me to think about, how am I living my life and how am I treating people every day? And I always, my teams always knew every year when I was at Rhode Island College at Maine, I was going to ask them who the janitor was that cleaned their locker room, right? They knew that. Like, how do you not know his name? He comes in here every day and he vacuums for you and he cleans up the bathroom, and and it kind of became a thing. Like, the freshmen didn't know it was coming. And one day I was going to ask them, and it was just about gratitude and appreciation and kindness and respect. And so it's something I think about all the time. I'm still happy. I think about my dad every day, and that lesson was very powerful to me, and I'm glad I can share it. And every year when I do, on the Monday after Thanksgiving, I get a lot of great conversation, texts, messages from people, online that I don't know, who say, I got 3 or 4 of them today. My father passed away in August. I was in tears reading about your post. So it had a huge impact on me, and hopefully that story has an impact on some other people as well.
Absolutely. I know I personally heard from a lot of people who were really moved by it, and I was as well. And definitely, I shared it with people at my job yesterday when I read it. It is a lesson that can be taken in every single facet of your life, in every single occupation. And I think the example of how do you treat somebody in your quote unquote mailroom is incredibly vivid, and one that we should always remember. So, Bob, thank you so much for sharing that. Speaking of lessons, we'll go to basketball. St. John's is 4-2 and trending in the right direction. The Red Storm took a beating against Michigan, but were able to win 2 games in Charleston, finishing in 3rd place. I'll start here because most coaches will say that you learn more from your losses. So what did you guys learn from the Michigan loss, and what were some takeaways from the Dayton game in which you guys lost by 7 in Charleston?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, if we're doing our job well, you're learning from your wins just as much, because every time you watch your team play, you're learning, and, the result isn't necessarily reflective of where you're at the time. The Michigan game was a huge setback. I mean, obviously it's a big game, first game at the Garden, a big time opponent, great crowd. Look, overall, I think from a basketball standpoint, what we've learned is our defense has to get a lot better. We've got to guard the ball better. We've got to be more consistent. We've got to be more connected. I think we've shown that we can score and that we can shoot the ball and that our offense can, ignite us at times. But great defense travels. Great defense is consistent. You can't always control. You can run great offense and miss a couple of shots, and now you're in a dogfight. Your defense better be good enough to bail you out. And I think we've been inconsistent defensively early in the year, and the Michigan game was the first example of that. We had a real hard time guarding their little quick point guard and keeping him out of the paint. We wanted to take the 3 away. We weren't able to do that. And we had some traps down in the post where we were trying to double to keep our big guys out of foul trouble, and they got the ball out of those traps quickly and found open shooters, and we gave up 3s. So, Dayton, similarly, I think we scored enough points against Dayton to win the game. But when your opponent scores in the 90s, you're going to have a hard time winning. So we couldn't get enough stops. So we've got to, number one, work on that, improve on that, which I think we have. And it's a constant with Coach P every day. talking about the defense, we've got a lot of guys who were known as scorers, where they came from, and their reputation. So we've got to develop into a cohesive defensive unit consistently day to day to have a chance to be a very good basketball team.
Going back to that Michigan game quickly, do you feel, and looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, and do you feel that perhaps you guys weren't ready for that kind of a game that early, given the roster makeup, or was it simply a matchup situation where you guys just didn't match up well? Obviously, missing still RJ in that situation. Any kind of that? I don't want to. I know you guys don't want to make excuses or anything like that, but like, is there any part of that in regards to a matchup like that when it kind of goes wrong?
I don't buy any of that. I don't really buy into that personally, because whatever one of those reasons or a few of those reasons might be, it's our job to have those fixed, right? You're gonna, you don't get to start playing your big games in January when, okay, we think we're ready, right? I mean, everybody's got to be ready when it's time to play. So obviously we didn't play very well. I thought the end of the first half in that Michigan game in particular really hurt us. We were hanging in there offensively, and then we gave up a little run to be down by 10 at halftime, and the rest of the game got away from us. But look, any of those, we didn't handle their shooters very well. We didn't handle their quick point guard very well, and we struggled with their big guys inside. So any of those scenarios where you'd say, hey, maybe we weren't quite ready. Well, it's our job to be ready, right? It's the second week of the season. It's our first big game, and we didn't play well. So we've got to own that and move on from it and get better from it.
After the Dayton loss, Rick Pitino said, "We're losing because we can't pay attention to a scouting report." He specifically mentioned allowing Deron Holmes to keep going to his right hand when the tape showed that he was 90% right hand dominant. He mentioned Joel Soriano wasn't forcing him left. When something like that is identified where the players are not effectively playing to the scouting report and you watch the film back with the players, how do you then effectively communicate better or get the guys to focus on the important lessons being taught when you see that they're doing things opposite from what you guys identified would be or should be successful?
I think it's really two things. It's clarification and it's emphasis, right? We've got to make sure the point is very clear. It's not just like, hey, this guy likes to go to his right hand. It's, take away his right hand, force him to his left. I think there's a comfort level and a maturity level that you need to have. I don't know that our guys early in the year were as comfortable with how detailed and how in depth we get in as far as scouting goes and what we do and what's expected of them and the way we prepare. But also we have to own it, right? If the guys aren't following what we're asking them to do, then we've got to make sure we get the point across. So, that was something I think it really stuck out to Coach. It's like their best player, and this is what he loves to do. And over and over and over, he's getting downhill to his right hand. Hopefully a growing experience for our guys. Hopefully they understand, how detailed we're going to be with scouts and what we expect them to be able to do with it, and can get better doing it in the future.
Obviously, St. John's has won a few games since that Dayton loss where Coach identified the scouting absorption wasn't working. So has something clicked perhaps in the last few games? Did some of that realization that you just mentioned, have you noticed that? Because St. John's did go on to beat Utah and obviously shellacked Holy Cross. So has there been a little bit of a switch or some realization, or maybe some of the veteran guys, telling everybody to, hey, we got to lock in a little more, something like that?
I hope so. I think anytime you take a couple of shots to the chin, you better have a sense of urgency with what you're doing moving forward. So, yeah, I think our guys learned something from that. But we beat Utah on offense. We made 13 threes in that game. That's a very good offensive team. So we knew they were going to be hard to guard, big, skilled, can score it at 5 positions. I do think We simplified some things as far as what we were going to do defensively, just so that, now part of it was you had 1 day to prep. It was 3 games in 4 days. So it wasn't like we were going to reinvent the wheel and come up with a new scheme. But yeah, I think it's a combination of that, a little bit more of a sense of urgency, a little bit more focus, where our guys probably looked at Dayton and maybe it was thinking like, okay, if we play our game, we'll be fine here. And, the attention to detail with Coach Pitino is really, really important. And I do think our guys are still getting used to that a little bit.
When St. John's beat Utah, Rick Pitino said that Naheem Aline, after Dayton, requested a meeting and apologized. He said he wasn't playing as well as he knew he could and said, quote, "I didn't come here to play like that." Pitino recalled that he said he never talked about asking to get back in the lineup or more minutes. And he then goes out and helps St. John's to the 91-82 win over Utah, which, in my opinion, St. John's doesn't win without Naheem Aline and how he played. 10 points, 3 steals, 3 assists, a steal, no turnovers, and played really good defense in 17 minutes. What does it tell you as a coaching staff when a player does that? And what message does it send to the rest of the locker room?
I agree with you. I don't think we win that game without him. And I think what it tells you is you've got a really mature kid on your team who you can win with. And I think that's also a great example for the rest of the guys in the locker room. If I'm correct, I don't think he got into the Utah game until there were about 6 minutes to go in the first half.
Yeah, he came in late.
So it wasn't like, hey, okay, we lost yesterday or 2 days ago, throw him in 3 minutes, see if he's got it. Like, after not playing as much as he'd like and not being in the starting lineup and having that conversation, he then sat for, the majority of the first half and still came in and was ready to play. So look, it speaks to a maturity level that you can win with. That's really what it is, right? Like that type of unselfish behavior. We have a lot of guys who came to St. John's for a specific reason. They want to win, of course. They want to play for a Hall of Fame coach. They want him to develop them into pros, right? So they can play in the future. It's natural to have a little bit of an agenda personally, even though you're all for the team and this and that. And to see a kid like Naheem, he is such a great person to be around every day. Does not say a lot, encourages his teammates, talks on the court with his teammates when needed, but there's not a lot to him other than production. That's what he's about. And it was honestly great to see, because you'd see a lot of guys in that scenario start complaining, maybe go south. And there's no way, with his character that he's going to do that. So I think it does send a message and set a tone for the rest of our guys that, what, if one of our better players, who, by the way, won a national championship last year, is willing to take that approach, then maybe we all have to sacrifice a little bit to get to where we need to go.
Since the Michigan game, St. John's has won 3 games in very different ways, with defense against North Texas, with offense against Utah, playing the most complete game of the season and doing both against Holy Cross, taking care of business. The team's gotten better with every game. I think that's obvious. What have you learned about this group through the last 5 games?
I think we've got a long way to go. I think there's a lot of room for growth. I certainly think our individual players have gotten better and gotten more comfortable. Guys like RJ Louise, Jordan Dingle, Glenn Taylor, certainly Naheem, they're comfortable with our approach. But I think there's a lot of room for us to continue to get better. The group absolutely loves being around each other. They enjoy playing together. And that's a credit to them and their character and who they are. And there's a competitive edge to them. Nobody came here to lose, right? Like everybody thought, okay, we're going to beat Michigan in the Garden. It'll be a big celebration. And then we took it on the chin. So I think there's a competitive edge and a narrowed focus that is going to help us improve, hopefully at a quicker rate as these games get tougher and tougher moving forward.
So you're at an interesting point in the schedule right now where, after playing so many games in such a short period of time, you got 3 games here that's kind of spaced out over the next 3 weeks. What is the biggest thing that St. John's has to work on right now from your perspective? Is there a point of emphasis, this last week after Holy Cross, in practice? Is it taking care of the ball better and limiting the turnovers? Is it getting more aggressive and drawing fouls? Because St. John's right now is last in regards to in the conference, can go into the free throw line. Is it implementing RJ Luis into the fold? What are some of the things that you guys are focusing right now in practice as the schedule starts to turn over?
The first thing is our team defense. We have to have a consistent team mentality on the defensive end where we're going to get stops to win games, right? We're going to get stops. We're going to rebound the ball. We're going to make the tough plays. We're going to get on the floor. That has to be consistent. Offensively, you touched on it. We've got to take care of the ball better. The way we play should be great spacing. The ball should have a lot of energy. We want to be a high assist team. We've got unselfish players. A 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio isn't really good. So we've got to make sure we're taking care of the basketball, continue to share it, but make the right plays. As far as personnel, we're pretty healthy right now, which is good. I mean, RJ is back, and we've got 14 guys in practice that can all help us. So there is still an element of trying different combinations, in practice, and you saw a little bit of three guards where you saw Naheem and Jordan Dingle and DJ out there together, and then you got to get the freshmen on board a little bit. We've got some talented freshmen, Simeon and Brady, who can really help us, and they've gotten their feet wet a little bit, but you've got to incorporate them to get comfortable playing with the veteran guys and mixing up the teams in practice. But I would say that the biggest key is getting a consistent team defense where we can go out and get stops and count on that on a regular basis. And you know what? If the ball goes in and we make 13 threes, we should run away with the game. And if we're struggling to shoot the ball, one good thing about the Holy Cross game was we didn't shoot the ball great, but it didn't impact the rest of our game, and that's a good sign.
RJ Luis returned against Holy Cross and immediately made his presence felt. 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 on the offensive side of the glass, 3 steals. He shot 6 of 12 from the floor in just 15 minutes. After a game where he said he's only 40% healthy right now, it's going to be scary when he gets to 100. What does he add to this team? How important is it to get him back in the mix? And how vital is it? And how important is he? Because he can play multiple positions, including backing up that 4 spot.
Well, that's 40% healthy if you trust his math. I don't know if I trust his math, but yeah, he gave us a big lift. He's had a great bounce to him, almost like he's a puppy let out of a cage. He can run around. He started practicing with us down in Charleston, and he's had a great explosive bounce to him. He's obviously a talented scorer. He can play multiple positions, like you said. So he gives us a scoring option in the backcourt at the wing, but maybe a face-up 4 option if we want to go with a smaller team when you're playing against, a 4-man who's more of a skilled guy as opposed to a power guy. He can guard those guys and get on the glass, maybe not as physical as some other guys, but with his athleticism. So he brings a versatility and an offensive talent level that can stretch the lineup a little bit. Like, they talk about in baseball where you have a big hitter in the middle of the lineup. Like, he can make the people around him better. He can play the 3 and be a scoring option there. He can play the 4 and really make us, quicker and harder to guard. And he also is pretty good at the front of the press, right? So defensively, his athleticism and his length can create some havoc and get some deflections. So hopefully he can have a huge impact for us.
Every team schedules bye games. You and I have touched on the formula of what you use to make out a schedule for a Big East team. Bye games are essential. They're necessary. In a game like Holy Cross that was basically decided at halftime, what does the staff look for? What do you hope to gain out of a 46-point win? Is it getting the freshmen acclimated, kind of like you just mentioned? Is it that team defense? Is it that lesson of, hey, all right, our 3-point shot didn't fall, yet we still scored 91 points in different ways? So what is it that you're hoping to gain out of a 46-point win?
For Coach, it's no let up, right? At halftime, he doesn't want to hear about the score. He doesn't want to hear about the opponent. He wants to go out and continue to dominate, and win the second half. And, it's really not about the score. It's about how we're playing, and it's about approach. You can't try and turn it on and off, and then you get up against an opponent who's a little better than you think they are, and now all of a sudden you're struggling to find it. So that's where it starts. It's about continuing to play up to our standard. One of the good things about games like that and the bye games, like you said, is it allows you to try some different combinations and get some game experience for some guys who may not get it. When you're in a dogfight against Dayton in the second half, you don't have 5 to 8 minutes for a freshman to say, hey, let's get him in there and see how he reacts, right? You've got to go with the guys are mature enough and comfortable enough and can play. So it does give you a chance to play different combinations and get some experience for those guys. One of the reasons why I think those games are important, but ultimately it's the mentality and the standard that St. John's basketball is going to be about. That shouldn't change based on the circumstances around us.
One of the other things that we saw against Holy Cross was the defense really ramp up. St. John's turned the Crusaders over 20 times and scored 27 points off of those turnovers. I know that you guys track deflections, and I'm sure there were plenty of those as well. Sorry. With 6 games under their belt right now, a healthy roster for the most part, RJ Luis back, have you noticed players becoming more familiar and comfortable with pressing the way that Coach Patino and you guys are teaching? How frequently can we expect to see that press? Is it game planned or opponent specific, or is this going to be the identity of the team and you want to show that every game?
It will be a big part of it for sure. But it's also got to fit, our personality and the strengths of our guys that we have on the floor and the game plan with who we're playing. Coach has always for 40 years, gotten after it defensively, and his press has been sort of a calling card. So, I do think guys have gotten more comfortable with it, just like they've gotten more comfortable with just about everything that we do, whether it's offensive schemes or, running our out of bounds plays or, the pace that we're playing at. So I think you'll see a good amount of it for sure. I think it depends on the lineups a little bit. You may see some guys that aren't as comfortable in the press. Maybe we don't have as quick a lineup out there, and maybe we're picking up full court, but we're not trapping. And when you get some of the quicker guys out there, maybe the smaller team where RJ's at the 4, you might be able to turn up the heat a little bit. A lot of the pressure that we apply and the turnovers that we create aren't necessarily because of a trap. A lot of it is just, we're trying to take away angles on the inbounds pass and see if we can get a deflection, and then it's wearing teams down, and maybe speeding them up a little bit where, we didn't necessarily get to trap the ball and steal it from them, but we sped them up. They tried to make a play, and they turned it over. So I think you'll continue to see a good amount of it for sure. And I do think our guys are getting more comfortable with it.
Speaking of somebody that has gotten and looked more comfortable, Jordan Dingle, after the last few games and missing a good bit of the offseason, he is starting to look more comfortable. He looks like he's starting to assert himself on offense and show the kind of scoring he's capable of that made him the second leading scorer in college basketball last year at Penn. Against Utah, we saw Danis Jenkins and Jordan Dingle combined for 37 points, 13 assists, 7 rebounds. When you have a Batman and Robin duo like that, hopefully in many games, what does it allow for? And what is the staff, what kind of flexibility does that give you when you have 2 guys in your backcourt that can anchor not only the scoring, but then also the defense and the distributing?
Well, it gives you the flexibility to play in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, DJ can play off the ball. Jordan can handle the ball. You've got a guy like Naheem that can play both guard spots as well, Simeon Wiltshire. So it gives you some versatility. It gives you a comfort level. The two of those guys have different, characteristics. I mean, DJ's a little bit more explosive, quicker, athletic. Jordan's more of a physical guard who can create space for himself and create shots for himself. So I think it's there's a developing comfort level with the unselfishness that everybody needs to play with, because like I said, naturally, a lot of guys have come here thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to play, and this is, the impact I'm going to have. And you're surrounded by a lot of good players. So everybody's got to sacrifice a little bit, but it gives you a comfort zone with two veteran guys like that who have played a lot of college basketball and had a lot of success individually. Gives you a comfort level to try some different things that maybe in another scenario you wouldn't.
St. John's has their first true road test on Friday against West Virginia. Leading the Mountaineers in scoring is someone you know well, Quinn Slazinski. What's the game plan to limit his offense on Friday?
Yeah, we coached Quinn last year at Iona, and he was going to be a big part of what we did, and then unfortunately he got hurt. He is a talented, versatile face-up four-man, very good competitor. Really, we can't let him just get comfortable. He's their leading scorer. We got to make sure he's working for everything. He's a terrific shooter if he's got time and space, and then he can play off of that. He can post up. So we'll throw some different looks at him, try and keep some athleticism on him, and really just make him work. He's a guy, if you make him work to score, he's still going to hit some tough shots, but hopefully their offense will have a hard time getting into a rhythm if we can put a little bit of heat on him and just make him really work for his shots.
I mentioned Deron Holmes earlier from Dayton, and St. John's did a good job against Utah's big men in that third place game against Charleston. Against West Virginia, you'll be seeing Jesse Edwards transfer from Syracuse, who St. John's actually saw last year in the Empire Classic. Edwards is averaging over 15 points per game and 10 rebounds per game. With what you've learned from how Joel Soriano and Zuby Ejiofor played against other big men so far, and I thought Joel was excellent in Utah with the way that he played defense. Zuby's defense has been his calling card, I think, so far in this early season. What will you guys be stressing to Joel and Zuby and Chris Ledlum when having to stop a guy as effective as Edwards has been this season?
They've got to get their work done early. You got to make sure position is important. You've got to stay up the line. You can't let Jesse Edwards catch the ball with 2 feet in the paint. He's a terrific athlete with great size and skill. Joel's going to have, and Zuby will probably have a little bit of a physical advantage as far as strength goes. So you got to get him off of his spots, and that starts with doing your work early. You can't let him catch it where he wants. The way our guards play with Jesse Edwards is going to be really important because they'll be in drop coverage a lot. He's such a great shot blocker with a lot of length that the guards are going to get in situations where they can engage him, and if he comes to help, maybe go get Joel or Zuby an easy basket, or the guards are going to have to make the right play coming off of a ball screen. So we'll give him some different looks. Some different guys will get on him. I think really it's doing your work early and being physical without fouling. For a guy like that, if he's getting easy baskets near the rim and in the paint, then he can have a big, big night. And we've got to make sure that doesn't happen.
West Virginia only has 8 guys on their active roster right now. Given their lack of bodies, and I don't want to give away state secrets here, but will there be a point of emphasis to use St. John's depth to our advantage, press more, do what you can to take away the hostile crowd and try to tire them out? You mentioned a lot of the defense recently has been about trying to get them to make mistakes, trying to tire them out, not necessarily with the press, but force those angles and the deflections and things like that. So with a team like West Virginia that is essentially shorthanded, is there going to be perhaps a point of emphasis on tiring them out early, especially on the road?
I think it's about pace for us, and it usually is, right? We want our opponents to have to play at a fast pace because that's what we do every day. So we get up and down, we play full court defense. We move the ball quickly on offense. We're looking for the first, good open shot we can get. So pace will certainly be a point of emphasis. We don't want to, let them just walk the ball up the floor and run 25 seconds off the shot clock and try and get the shot they want. And, if we can make them uncomfortable and pick up the pace of the game, I think, that'll be to our advantage.
I ended the last episode with this question. I'll do it again. What are the keys to victory for St. John's if they want to leave Morgantown on Friday night with a win?
I think the first one is our team defense. We got to have a team defensive mentality where we make it tough to score. And you go into a place like Morgantown, which is a really tough place to play, your defense has to travel, right? We got to make it hard for them to score. The second thing is the pace, right? We've got to make it a faster game. I do think we can wear them out a little bit. I do think we can take advantage of our depth, but we're at our best when we're playing in the open floor. We're getting out on the fast break. We're moving the ball quickly. We've got a lot of weapons out there. And with that, it's taking care of the basketball. It's keeping the turnovers to a minimum. There are going to be some when you're, playing at a fast pace and you're trying to make plays, but we've got to take care of the basketball. So I think if our team defense is good and consistent, and we can get to playing at our pace and take care of the basketball, we'll be in good shape.
There you have it, Assistant Coach Bob Walsh on episode 2 of Coachcast here on the Iron Storm podcast. Bob, best of luck on Friday against West Virginia. Thank you for joining us, as always.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Johnny Nation. Appreciate you guys for listening. St. John's takes on West Virginia this Friday on the road. We'll catch you next time.